Namaskar. A warm welcome to World News and Indian Perspective on All India Radio. This is R.S. Raghu, and with me is Aditi Lumba, bringing glimpses of the major developments of the day from across the globe. Over the next half an hour, we shall bring you the latest from the world of politics, economy, sports, entertainment, and more. The headlines. United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres warns that Russia-Ukraine war is hurting poorer nations reliant on wheat. Talks resume between Ukrainian and Russian delegations to find a solution to the ongoing conflict. Prime Minister Narendra Modi interacts with stakeholders involved in Operation Ganga. Over 22,000 Indian citizens evacuated from Ukraine. Defence Minister Rajnath Singh says government accords highest priority to safety and security of India's weapon systems. India to begin COVID vaccination for children from 12 to 14 years of age from Wednesday. India dispatches fourth convoy of 2,000 metric tons of wheat to Afghanistan. And in Women's Cricket World Cup, India to take on defending champions England in Mount Maunganui on Wednesday. As we start the bulletin, we appeal to our listeners to stay safe from COVID-19 by following these 4 simple steps. Get fully vaccinated, wear a face mask, maintain 2 gaz ki duri for social distancing, and focus on hand and face hygiene. And now the news in detail. The United Nations chief has said Russia-Ukraine war is holding a sword of Damocles over the global economy, especially poor developing countries that face skyrocketing food, fuel and fertilizer prices. Speaking to reporters on Monday, Secretary General Antonio Guterres said Russia and Ukraine represent more than half of the world's supply of sunflower oil and about 30% of the world's wheat. He said 45 African and at least developed countries import at least 1/3 of their wheat from Ukraine and Russia, and 18 of them import at least 50%. These countries include Egypt, Congo, Burkina Faso, Lebanon, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, and Yemen. As the fighting between the Russian and the Ukrainian forces continued and intensified on the 19th day, the representative from Kiev and Russia resumed their peace talks to find a solution to the ongoing conflict, demanding a ceasefire from the Russian side. A member of the Ukraine delegation and presidential aide, Mikhailo Podolyak, wrote on Twitter that negotiations are ongoing, adding that his side would be pushing for a ceasefire and withdrawal of troops from the territory of the country. Both countries kept a diplomatic path open on Tuesday with new rounds of talks after the 4th round of talks between the two countries once again ended without a breakthrough. Russia has imposed sanctions on US President Joe Biden and a dozen other top officials. In a statement, the Russian Foreign Ministry on Tuesday said the measure, which also applies to Secretary of State Antony Blinken and Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin, is the consequence of the extremely Russophobic policy pursued by the current US administration. Russia also put on its top list Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff Mark Milley, National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan, Central Intelligence Agency Director William Burns, and White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki. In response to Russia's military action in Ukraine, the US banned President Vladimir Putin and Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov, as well as a ban on Russian imports of oil, natural gas and coal.
India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi interacted with stakeholders involved in Operation Ganga. Operation Ganga successfully evacuated more than 22,000 Indian citizens as well as 147 foreign nationals belonging to 18 countries from Ukraine. During the interaction, representatives of Indian community and private sector in Ukraine, Poland, Slovakia, Romania and Hungary narrated their experience of being part of Operation Ganga. They spoke about the challenges they face and expressed their sense of satisfaction and honor at having contributed to such a complex humanitarian operation. Prime Minister expressed his warm appreciation for Indian community leaders, volunteer groups, companies, private individuals and government officials who worked tirelessly for the success of the operation. He praised the patriotic fervor, the sense of community service and the team spirit displayed by all the stakeholders involved in Operation Ganga. Mr. Modi especially praised the various community organizations, pointing out that their selfless service exemplifies the Indian civilizational values that they continue to embody even in foreign shores. Speaking about the efforts made by government to ensure the safety of Indian nationals during the crisis, Prime Minister Modi recalled his personal interactions with leaders of Ukraine and its neighboring countries. He expressed gratitude for the support received from all the foreign governments. Reiterating the high priority that government attaches to the safety of Indians abroad, Prime Minister recalled that India has always acted with alacrity to assist its citizens during any international crisis. He said, guided by India's age-old philosophy of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, India has also extended humanitarian support to nationals of other countries during emergencies. Over 22,500 Indian citizens have returned safely from Ukraine under challenging circumstances amid the ongoing conflict between Russia and Ukraine. Making a statement in both houses of parliament on the situation in Ukraine, External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jashankar said 90 flights, including both civilian and Indian Air Force, operated under the Operation Ganga. In line with India's principle of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, foreign nationals were also evacuated from the conflict zones and brought to India. This included citizens from Nepal and Bangladesh. The minister informed that the mortal remains of Indian student Naveen Shekharappa Gyanagador, who was killed in Ukraine, will be brought back to India, and the Indian embassy is pursuing the matter.
In today's hotspot section, we bring you the statement of External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jashankar on Ukraine in Parliament.
I rise to make a statement to this august House on the situation in Ukraine and the implications that it has had for India, including for our nationals resident there. Despite the challenges posed by the serious ongoing conflict, we have ensured that about 22,500 citizens have returned home safely. The House would recognize the complexity of the various endeavors that have made it possible. As honorable members would be aware, a tense situation between Russia and Ukraine erupted into conflict on 24 February 2022. The root causes for this are complex, going back to a range of issues including the security architecture, political governance and interstate politics. To that was added the challenges of implementing understandings reached earlier. What is pertinent to note is that the hostilities placed the Indian community of 20,000 plus in direct danger. Even while we were participating in the global deliberations of this evolving situation in the UN Security Council, the pressing challenge was to safeguard our citizens and ensure that they were not in harm's way. At the direction of the Prime Minister, we launched Operation Ganga, thereby undertaking one of the most challenging evacuation exercises during an ongoing conflict situation. Honorable members should know that our community was dispersed across Ukraine, posing its own logistical challenges. The exercise was undertaken at a time when military actions, including airstrikes and shelling, were underway. It involved movement in a war-torn situation in a large country, at times over 1,000 kilometers, and it required exiting border checkpoints that were clogged by an estimated 26 lakh refugees. The entire exercise involved a whole-of-the-government approach, with the Prime Minister himself chairing review meetings almost on a daily basis. At the MEA, we monitored the evacuation operations on a 24/7 basis as well. We got excellent support from all concerned ministries and organizations, including the Ministry of Civil Aviation, Ministry of Defense, the National Disaster Response Force, Indian Air Force, and private airlines. There was an effective coordination with state governments in ensuring that arrangements made by them for return of Indian students to their respective states once they landed in Delhi or Mumbai. Apprised members of the steps taken in advance of the actual conflict situation. As tensions increased, the Embassy of India in Ukraine had started a registration drive for Indian nationals in January 2022. As a result, around 20,000 Indian nationals registered with our embassy in Kiev. Most of the Indian nationals were students who were pursuing medical studies in Ukrainian universities that were dispersed throughout the country. More than half the students were in universities in eastern Ukraine that borders Russia and has been the epicenter of conflict so far. students hailed from 35 states and UTs of India, with more than 1,000 students each from the states of Kerala, UP, Haryana, Tamil Nadu, Gujarat, Maharashtra, Bihar and Rajasthan. In view of the continued build-up of tensions in February, the embassy issued an advisory on 15 February 2022 advising Indian nationals in Ukraine whose stay is not essential to leave the country temporarily. It also advised Indian nationals not to travel to Ukraine or to undertake non-essential movements within Ukraine. Further advisories were also given on 20 February and 22 February, pressing students to leave Ukraine. Air bubble restrictions then in force were immediately lifted in consultation with the Ukrainian side to increase the number of direct flights. As a result, around 4,000 Indian nationals departed from Ukraine by direct and indirect flights till 23 February 2022. Despite our efforts, however, a large majority of students elected to continue staying in Ukraine. We must understand their predicament in this regard. There was a natural reluctance to leave educational institutions and affect their studies. Some universities actively discouraged and showed reluctance to offer online courses. Many of them received conflicting advice regarding safety. The challenges of travel back may have also been a factor. In the period leading to 24 February, the political signals were confusing as well. Public urgings not to be taken in by alarmism and reports of forced withdrawals created a confusing picture. The net result was that about 18,000 Indian citizens were caught in the midst of conflict when it began. The ministry started reinforcing the strength of our mission in Ukraine in anticipation of a difficult situation. Additional Russian-speaking officers were deputed to Kiev on 22 February to our embassy to keep in constant touch with distressed Indian nationals in Ukraine and their families in India. A situation room was established in Delhi on 16 February. The embassy took parallel measures. The MEA Situation Room was ramped up to over 100 personnel, allowing them to respond to over 13,000 calls and 9,000 emails till date. The strategy for evacuation was to take out Indian nationals from western neighboring countries of Ukraine that were Poland, Slovak Republic, Hungary, Romania and Moldova. This was necessitated due to the closure of Ukrainian airspace on 24 February. To carry this out, we were required to strengthen our missions in these countries so that they could deploy teams at the border points, set up transit camps, operate effective control rooms, and facilitate the large number of air flights. Along with that, they also handled incoming humanitarian assistance. 47 additional MEA officials were dispatched to ensure these objectives, supplementing our pre-existing embassy strength of 58. Along with our embassy personnel, these officials have gone to extraordinary lengths in difficult circumstances to ensure that Operation Ganga was successful. Their constant intervention at border checkpoints helped to address severe challenges posed by overcongestion. Their liaison with local governments and community organizations was responsible for the boarding, lodging and medical attention of evacuees. And of course, they handled the complexity of flight operations on the ground so that the return home was a smoother process. Under Operation Ganga, 90 flights have been operated, out of which 76 were civilian flights and 14 were Indian Air Force flights. The evacuation flights were from Romania, Poland, Hungary and Slovakia. While Indian Air Force rose to the occasion, most of the private airlines, and that includes Air India Express, Indigo, SpiceJet, Vistara, Go Air and Air Asia, also participated. During this period, Prime Minister himself spoke to the presidents of Russia and Ukraine on multiple occasions. He specifically took up the issue of safe evacuation of Indian nationals, especially from Kharkiv and Sumy. Prime Minister also spoke to the Prime Ministers of Romania, Slovak Republic and Hungary and the President of Poland to seek their support for facilitation of entry of Indian nationals to their countries. I most sincerely thank these partner nations for opening their doors and helping our citizens in hour of need. I was also in constant touch with my own counterparts in Ukraine, Russia, Poland, Romania, Hungary, Slovakia and Moldova for similar reasons. Foreign Secretary maintained contact with ambassadors of Ukraine and Russia and New Delhi, while our ambassador in Kiev and Moscow followed up with their respective capitals. Prime Minister deputed 4 union ministers as special envoys to Romania, Hungary, Slovak Republic and Poland to facilitate Operation Ganga. This included Shri Jyotiraditya Scindia to Romania, Shri Kiran Rijiju to Slovak Republic, Shri Hardeep Singh Puri to Hungary and General Shri VK Singh to Poland. Their personal supervision of the evacuation process made a substantial difference in the ease of border crossing and the care taken of our citizens thereafter. The most challenging part of the evacuation exercise was that of evacuating Indian nationals from Kharkiv and Sumy. Both the places witnessed heavy shelling and airstrikes. Many options were worked out to evacuate students through buses and trains. A team from our embassy in Moscow had also been sent to the Russia-Ukraine border to facilitate the possible evacuation of Indian students through Belgorod and Kursk. Many students from Kharkiv were moved to Pesochin in view of anticipated escalation of hostilities. While our efforts were able to stave off some of the more extreme scenarios, their presence in a safety zone allowed for subsequent ferrying through buses to the western borders. The Sumy evacuation, which was the last one on a significant scale, was also extremely complex as our students faced the prospect of being caught in crossfire. Their evacuation from the city needed a credible ceasefire, a daunting challenge in the current situation. This finally materialized due to the personal intervention of the Prime Minister himself with the presidents of Ukraine and Russia. Noting the extraordinary challenges before us, we also dispatched a special team of senior officers to the vicinity of Sumy. Their coordination with the military forces deployed there with the ICRC and the arrangement of logistics was responsible for the final outcome. During the entire period, our embassy in Ukraine has been working incessantly to contact Indian nationals, arranging and facilitating transport, coordinating with local authorities, providing food, etc. Throughout the evacuation exercise, our embassy was in constant touch with the Ukrainian authorities. We appreciate their positive response to our request during this period. Their intervention was responsible for running additional trains needed for the evacuation exercise. The embassy also provided travel documents within a very, very short time in cases where Indian nationals had lost their passports. They also partnered with neighboring embassies to resolve challenging situations on the border. On 13th March, in view of the rapidly deteriorating security situation in Ukraine, including attacks in its western part, it was decided to temporarily relocate the Indian embassy in Ukraine to Poland. This situation will be reassessed in light of further developments. Honorable members should also recognize the great contribution made by community representatives, volunteers and NGOs in the evacuation exercise. Equally noteworthy were the efforts of Indian businesses in the countries neighboring Ukraine and indeed in Ukraine itself. In numerous ways, they assisted in the transport, shelter and sustenance of the evacuating students. They ensured that our citizens did not become a burden for Ukraine's neighbors who were receiving so many other refugees at that time. The nation owes them a debt. In line with India's principle of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, foreign nationals were also evacuated from conflict zones and brought to India. They included about 150 citizens, 147 to be exact, of 18 countries. Among them are immediate neighbors like Bangladesh and Nepal. Many of the Ukrainian nationals that were family members of Indian nationals have also been evacuated. We also provided free passage to Ukrainian nationals from India to Poland in our evacuation flights. In response to the emerging humanitarian situation, India has provided relief supplies to Ukraine and its neighboring countries. Unfolding developments in Ukraine have simultaneously played out in the United Nations, in particular the Security Council, where India is serving as a non-permanent member. India's position on the Ukraine conflict has been steadfast and consistent. We have expressed deep concern at the worsening situation and called for immediate cessation of violence and end to all hostilities. Our statements at the Security Council and the General Assembly have urged an urgent ceasefire and ensuring safe passage for stranded civilians. We have also highlighted the humanitarian assistance extended by India to Ukraine and its neighbors at this hour of crisis. We have reiterated at the highest levels of our leadership to all parties concerned that there is no other choice but the path of diplomacy and dialogue. We have emphasized to all member states of the UN that the global order is anchored on international law, UN Charter, and respect for territorial integrity and sovereignty of states. The Ukraine conflict has major economic implications. Its impact on energy and commodity prices is already visible. The disruption of global supply chain is expected to be significant. India has substantial dealings with both Russia and Ukraine. An assessment in this regard by the government is underway. However, the House will appreciate that there is all the more need for an Atmanirbhar Bharat. Operation Ganga is a testimony of our commitment to ensure that Indians in distressed situations abroad can count on their government. We have shown this on numerous occasions before, but rarely in one as challenging as the ongoing conflict in Ukraine. These are undeniably challenging times, but the House may rest assured that whether it is our approach to the political situation, the implications for the economy, or the welfare of Indians abroad, our government will respond with the confidence, diligence, and responsibility that has been our hallmark. Thank you.
This is All India Radio, giving you the news. For quick news updates round the clock, follow us on Twitter at AIR News Alerts.
Defence Minister Rajnath Singh has said the government accords highest priority to the safety and security of India's weapon systems. He asserted that India's missile system is safe, secure and very reliable. The Defence Minister was making a statement in both the Houses of Parliament on Tuesday over the inadvertent firing of missile last week. A report.
Defence Minister Rajnath Singh said the country's safety procedures and protocols are of the highest order and are reviewed from time to time. He added that India's armed forces are well trained, disciplined and well experienced in handling such systems. Mr. Singh said standard operating procedures, SOPs for operations, maintenance and inspection of such systems were being reviewed. He said if any shortcoming is found, the same would be immediately rectified. The minister expressed regret over the inadvertent firing of a missile which landed in the territory of Pakistan. However, it did not cause any damage. He informed the House that a formal high-level inquiry has been ordered in this matter and the government has taken this matter seriously. The minister said the exact reason for the incident will come out after the inquiry. Abhishek Mukhopadhyay for World News, All India Radio.
In India, COVID-19 vaccination for children in the age group of 12 to 14 years will start from on Wednesday. Only Corbevax vaccine will be used for the beneficiaries of this age group. India's Health Secretary Rajesh Bhushan has written a letter to Chief Secretaries and administrators of all the states and union territories in this regard. The Health Secretary said the vaccinator and verifier will be responsible to ensure that any beneficiary aged less than 12 years on the date of vaccination is not vaccinated, with special attention to those born in 2010. All beneficiaries who have attained age of 12 years will be able to register on CoWIN. The Health Secretary precaution dose will now be provided to all the people 60 plus and above.
India on Tuesday dispatched the fourth convoy of humanitarian assistance to Afghanistan, consisting of 2,000 metric tons of wheat. Till now, a total of 8,000 metric tons have been sent to the country. World Food Programme is distributing the wheat within Afghanistan. Bangladesh State Foreign Minister Shahryar Alam has termed the recent report by a news magazine about China setting up a missile maintenance center in Bangladesh as completely false and misleading. Shahryar Alam told media on Monday that regular maintenance is required when any equipment is purchased from a foreign country, but beyond that, there is no plan to build a permanent facility in Bangladesh. He said that no such facility existed in the past as well. He said the government will also write to Nikkei in this connection.
In cricket, India will take on defending champions England in the fourth match of ICC Women's World Cup at Bay Oval in Mount Maunganui on Wednesday. The match will begin at 6:30 a.m. Indian time. So far, India have won two matches, one against Pakistan and the other against West Indies, and lost one game to host New Zealand, while England has not tasted any victory in the tournament so far. All India Radio is broadcasting the running commentary of all the matches of Women's World Cup on its all primary channels across the country, including AIR, FM Rainbow Network, DRM and DTH channels. Now let us take a look at the major developments around the world as reported in the foreign press. Let us take a look at the press reports on China. Prasar Bharati Beijing reports China is planning to allow a small number of foreign students with actual needs who are stuck in their countries for about 2 years due to its COVID visa bans to return to the country, amid reports that Beijing has issued visas to some Pakistani students. Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson Zhao Liqian did not denied the reports of visas being given to Pakistani students, but was silent about permitting 23,000 Indian students, mostly studying medicine in China. According to Bloomberg, China sells US LNG to Europe at a hefty profit. It writes that China sold several US liquefied natural gas shipments to Europe, a rare move by the world's top buyer that highlights how sky-high prices are rerouting trade flows. BSS reports that unemployment in China rose and youth unemployment spiked in the first months of the year. Data showed Tuesday as a surge of coronavirus cases rattled businesses and forced closures.
Let us take a look at what made the headlines in Nepal. Beyond reports that in any bilateral cooperation, Nepal is capable of deciding what is best for the country, said spokesperson of the Nepali Congress Party and former Foreign Minister Prakash Sharan Mahat, asserting that the decision should be respected by all sides. NepalNews.com writes that PM Sher Bahadur Dweba and visiting Foreign Minister of Saudi Arabia Prince Faisal bin Fahran Al Saud have met. The meeting took place at the Prime Minister's residence in Baluwatar. During the meeting, relations between the two countries and various dimensions were discussed, according to the Prime Minister's Secretariat. Khabar Hub reports that China uses Pakistan to clandestinely supply defense hardware in Myanmar. Republica headline reads, BRI to be in focus when Wang Yi visits Nepal this month. Let us have some brief news from Bangladesh. In an effort to control the price of edible oil, the government of Bangladesh has decided to reduce the value-added tax VAT on refined and unrefined soybean and palm oil, reports Prosam Olo. 1 crore people will get special cards to purchase essential commodities at lower prices, reports UNB. The announcement was made by Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina on Tuesday while chairing a meeting of the Awami League and the 14-party alliance supporting the government.
Let us take a look at the press reports on Afghanistan. Media has carried prominently that India dispatches 4th convoy of 2,000 tons of wheat to Afghanistan. The World Health Organization, WHO, says that Afghanistan has been experiencing a measles resurgence that started at the beginning of 2021. Tolo News writes that according to WHO, from January 2021 to 13th March 2022, there have been 48,366 cases and 250 deaths of measles in Afghanistan. ANI, citing media reports, writes that Taliban is pressurizing Afghan embassies to replace former diplomats with its supporters. Tolo News reports that a Jirga gathering of Pashtuns in Bannu city in southern Khyber Pakhtunkhwa in Pakistan that was held from 11th to 14th of March called for Loya Jirga and general elections in Afghanistan to elect a representative government. US astronaut Wendy Hai will return with 2 Russians in the midst of deepening tensions between the countries. Wendy Hai, who breaks the US single spaceflight record of 340 days on Tuesday, is due to leave with 2 Russians aboard a Soyuz capsule for touchdown in Kazakhstan on March 30th. According to NASA, Wendy Hai's homecoming plans remained unchanged even as Russia-Ukraine conflict has resulted in cancelled launches, broken contracts. Wendy Hai, a retired army colonel, moved into the space station last April, launching on a Soyuz from Kazakhstan and Pyotr Dubrov and another Russian. The world record of 438 continuous days in space belongs to Russia.
A quick look at the headlines once again. United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres warns that Russia-Ukraine war is hurting poorer nations reliant on wheat. Talks resume between Ukrainian and Russian delegations to find a solution to the ongoing conflict. Prime Minister Narendra Modi interacts with stakeholders involved in Operation Ganga. Over 22,000 Indian citizens evacuated from Ukraine. Defence Minister Rajnath Singh says government accords highest priority to safety and security of India's weapon systems. India to begin COVID vaccination for children from 12 to 14 years of age from Wednesday. India dispatches 4th convoy of 2,000 metric tons of wheat to Afghanistan. And in Women's Cricket World Cup, India to take on defending champions England in Mount Maunganui on Wednesday. And now, before we end, let us listen to Mahatma Gandhi's favorite bhajan Vaishnav Jan by artists from Sri Lanka.
Vaishnav Jan to tele kahiye je वीर पराई जाने रे पर दुखे उपकार करे कोई मन अभिमान नाने रे वैष्णव जन तो तेने कहिए जे वीर पराई जाने रे सकल लोकमान सहुने वंदे निंदानक.
And with that, we end this bulletin. We'll be back at the same time tomorrow with the next edition of World News.